Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our GD Angel Wings build series. In our previous videos, we covered the wiring, the painting and cutting of the panel, and of course, the cutting of the housing. So next up, we're gonna start assembling it and watch this light come back to life. So I do wanna add a quick disclaimer. Depending on how you're building your lights, if it's with LED strip, then you're fine. You don't need to change anything. However, with the way we're gonna build these lights in this tutorial, I'm actually gonna be using LED bulbs in these specific locations, like this, which means that you're actually gonna want to keep these areas chrome. So that was my mistake, and I'm supposed to leave them chrome. So this part of the tutorial, I'm actually gonna go ahead and aluminum tape this to get some of that reflection back. So again, if you're using LED strip, that's not going to be really covered in this tutorial. However, you do not need to make these chrome. You can make these black, and black is probably a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and really quick aluminum tape this, and then we'll move on to the next part of the tutorial. So I've gone ahead and aluminum taped all this. So just for the purposes of this video, assume that this is the original chrome. That's far more ideal than using the aluminum tape. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to show you what it would be like with aluminum tape. It is a little crude, it's not ideal, so just take it with a grain of salt. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. We're done prepping this. So now we need to prep the rest of our panels. This is the circle the circle break ring part. You can see here that it lights up. However, we're going to make sure that none of the light leaks through the back, through the LEDs, because the LEDs are transparent. So what we're going to do for that is use a bit of liquid electrical tape. What this does is it does insulate as well. And they do make this in a spray version, but because we don't have that many LEDs, liquid version is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and just very quickly brush this on. I'm not going to try to get too much on. And also, while doing that, make sure I do not get it over the actual illuminating part of the light, because then it would show up whenever we try to light the ring up. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to be perfect. You just want to be able to block the majority of the light going through the LED. So doing that right here. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and let that dry and move on to the next step. Next up, we're gonna go ahead and start mocking up the turn signal. So I've already gone ahead and insulated what I need to with sugu, just to make sure none of the raw wire contacts are an issue. So one of the things I need to do is kind of organize these correctly. So on the 0405 STI, which is what this taillight is, the outside is the turn signal. So I'm going to put the outside wires through here. And this is most likely going to mount like this on the light. So I'm going to factor that in and put the double-sided tape. And then finally reverse. It's going to go through here. Now before you secure everything, obviously make sure your sequential turn signal is speed calibrated correctly to match the other one. But other than that, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure everything fits. Pull my wires through. And if you feel like it's messy, obviously zip tying the wires would not be a bad idea. Sometimes we like to add extra wire length to just facilitate making it easier to put together. But for now, I don't need to. So it'll fit like this. Now the one thing you want to make sure is, will it fit, have you trimmed enough, really? And what I mean by that is those areas that we instructed you to trim in the previous videos, you want to make sure you trim enough so that this fits properly in the light. So what I'm going to do is I have this lens half. I have a bad one, so I'm not afraid of scratching it. And I'm gonna basically, without sealing anything, without securing anything, I'm gonna make sure that this fits in here like the factory does without issue. And if it does, then I know that it fits correctly and I am good to go. So this is in its correct spot. And I can tell from that it does indeed fit correctly. Obviously there's some wire sticking out, so I need to make sure I grab all those and pull it out before it becomes an issue. But other than that, it looks good. So I already know that I don't need to bend this or remold it or any kind. So this top piece is good. So I'm ready to seal that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this back out. And now I can go ahead and zip tie these wires kind of shorter. And I'm gonna put double-sided tape on this to prep it. So go ahead and do that right now. Cool. So turn signal's good. It's prepped. I can put it aside. If you do have fitment issues with it, so for example, when this goes in and it feels like that you're fighting it, cut more of this area, or you may need to use a heat gun and just heat up this area and just kind of bend it like this a little bit. Make sure you are heat gunning to make it nice and soft. We have had people accidentally crack it in that process. When you do heat gun from the front. Don't heat gun from the back, because then you're gonna remelt the solder and you'll have issues there. But for this specific part, turn signal is done and ready to move on. So finally, just to give you an example of how to heat gun, I have a diffused signal piece that, if you can see here, is ever so slightly just curved up the wrong way, like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and heat gun it. All right, that's good. So I'm gonna go hold this a little longer, make sure as it cools that it holds that specific position. Again, don't use too much force, otherwise you will snap the panel. If you do snap the panel, shoot us an email. We do singular replacements. Because we kind of just want you to make sure these get built. We love seeing you guys finish these. Now, for this specific one, I'm going to add more aluminum tape to make sure that I get the reflection I want. So you can see here that there is these three distinct strips between the white. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut these thinner. And put aluminum tape between them. And what that does is helps with the reflection and reuse of the light a little bit. So go ahead and do this. Just like that. And I want to be careful to not accidentally cover the design. So yeah, that's a very important detail. Make sure you don't accidentally cover the design while you're doing this, if you do decide to do this. It's definitely not necessary. The bulbs should be sufficiently bright enough, but for us, I like to make sure the bright lights are always brighter than stock. So this is why we go ahead and do this. So again, right here. like that. So this panel is now ready to go, which means everything we have is ready to go. So now it's time for the fun part. So now that we have everything prepped, we're basically going to do what I consider the hardest part of this process, which is starting to get these panels glued in. So let's start with the two easy ones, which is the turn signal and the circle piece. Circle piece, super straightforward, because this is getting a bulb. All you really need to do is wire this out to the back, like so. And you're going to make sure, see, so the panel, the way the kit works is these circles basically turn into a perfect straight line, only in one orientation. If you start rotating it, then the line doesn't exist, if you can see. So there's only one straight line, and that's basically how we align it. So you're gonna want to get that straight line aligned with the taillight. As long as it's symmetrical, left and right, again, it all really boils down to personal preference. So the way I like to do it is I use clear sugu in this case so that it doesn't seep and leak. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add 2 small pieces of butyl on the edges to just hold the panel in place. Like so. Or we'll do 3, Today's a good day, we'll do 3. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is now we're gonna take the clear sugu and I'm gonna add it to this edge. And we're gonna only need to do like maybe, again, 3 small dips and just triangulize it. So here, here, and here. Good enough. Spread it out a little bit so it doesn't leak through the edges on the side we don't want it to show up on. Okay, wipe your hands. And now we're going to go ahead and place this down in the correct orientation. Like that. Now with clean hands, I'm going to kind of use a glove here. Push down. Now I'm going to stare at this so you can't see what I'm looking at. Okay, that's good. So I like that. And of course, regularly test everything. So we're going to go ahead and put a pair of probes on here. Make sure it looks good. And that is technically how you do the heart DIY, just the heart only one. But yeah, that's good. And you know, just for fun, let's test out what it looks like with a bulb behind it. So I'm gonna take one of these bulbs. Super bright. Stick it in here. And just like that. So it looks pretty good. You can see how the liquid E-tape really prevents light from going through the LEDs. It's still a little bit there, but getting like perfect removal is kind of hard. So other than that, I mean, the circle is done. And because of the butyl tape, it should be able to hold itself quite well. So we don't need to worry about that. But yeah, let's move on to the turn signal. So again, turn signal is a little trickier because you do have these wires we need to zip tie. And this is kind of the process where we need to do this and then let it sit for a little bit just to make sure everything fits correctly. So what I'm gonna actually do here is I'm gonna go ahead and secure the sequential module. But before I do that, I'm actually going to turn it on and adjust my speed to the speed I want. Because once it's secured, at least with how we do it, it won't be able to be adjusted. So a good thing I did that because right now it's too slow for my taste. I'm gonna go ahead and change it. I think that's okay. I'm gonna keep mental note of where I have it pointed. Okay, that's good. So now, I'm gonna go ahead and tape this down. Double-sided tape. I'm also gonna add sugu next to it, just for added safety. or added security, because I don't want it to rattle inside the light. Put my wires through the hole. So now what I'm about to do next is pretty unique in the sense that we technically allow the GD tail light itself, the lens, to determine how everything sits. And you'll see what I mean when I do it, and I'll explain it a little bit. But it's really in the effort of ensuring the best kind of fitment with the LEDs and make sure the LEDs don't try to fight each other. So I will show you. So I'll go ahead, put these wires through. I am now going to secure this ZLEDs module to my flat side of the board, like that. And for the sake of testing or security, I'm going to just get a little dab of sugu. I'm just going to put it like right here, just to make sure it stays in place. Okay, so now with this panel, I'm going to take that same method as the circle part. I'm going to add little bits of butyl tape just to kind of make sure it sits where it needs to sit. And right now I'm going to mock it and make mental note of kind of where the wires are staying. So just like this. So I know that this panel will hit right here. Let's see, where else? It'll probably contact right here against the wall, a little bit here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add sugu again and triangulate in those strategic areas. So one little bit right here. And don't use too much, don't need that much. A little bit right here, a little bit right here, a little bit right here. And if you need to add more later, you can always reach in from the back. So that's good. So now sugu is slightly viscous. So what I'm going to do is mark and put my panel in. Like so. And don't worry about the paper. We can peel it off later. Nothing's being final sealed yet. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm actually going to go ahead, take my light, and now put it in the lens. Have to be careful because it wants to fall out. Put it in like this, and we'll help make sure it doesn't fall out. And wipe a little bit of the sugu off. Make it look nice while I still can. But again, it can always rub off later, so not a huge deal. I'm going to do this so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. There we go. Cool. Just like that. So now, what I'm going to do is a little unique. I'm going to go ahead and actually put this face down for about 5 minutes. And what that will do is allow the sugu to droop down and kind of mate between the panel and the housing. After 5 minutes, I'm going to flip it back up and then leave it like that for the remainder of the hour it takes to cure. That way I know that the sugu doesn't droop all the way out to the front and kind of look ugly. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for 5 minutes. And in the meantime, we'll talk about how this works. So we're gonna put the harness in, and we're obviously not going to use the turn and reverse bulbs because they will be getting wired directly to the harness like so. However, for this specific light, the rest will be regular LED bulbs. One of the things you're gonna notice if you look is these two sockets on the USDM tail light are going to be dual intensity, meaning one is, they're both break and night. However, if you look at the harness, you'll notice that on this specific bulb, so I believe the one that goes in here, you'll notice that there is a white and black wire on the input side, but it's cut from factory. So what you're going to want to do is to get break functionality back into this, you're going to want to tap this back into the white and black wire. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we'll probably do it off camera because it's fairly simple to do. So a couple of minutes have passed. I've gone ahead and flipped this over just to make sure everything's good. And I've actually gone ahead and already rewired my harness in that same time. So now keep in mind, this is all pretty arbitrary based on how you want it to behave. But in this case, how I want this to behave is I want that ring to be full bright, that diffuse ring to be full bright under DRL, and my wings to be a little dimmer under DRL. And that's gonna be kind of like an Angel Wings JDM style setup. And then when I hit the brakes, I want this to get brighter, and I want my inner LED circle to get brighter, and to turn on. So that's how I have it wired. And what I did to do that was I hooked up, right here. I hooked up this cut black and white wire. Black and white is break on this harness from the socket to here. And then on this harness, I cut it and rewired break to DRL, which is what this wire is. So you can see it taps in right here. And what that gives me is this. So right now, so keep in mind, this isn't wired in right now, so you can't tell what it looks like. But this would be my DRL. So DRL, everything would be on. However, this one would be brighter than the rest. And then when I hit the brakes, these two get brighter, and then this will turn on. So keep in mind, you can do many combinations. You can always rewire it however you like. But it should give me an effect like this when I hit the brake. Oops. It should give me an effect like this when I hit the brakes. Let's see if I can get this to work. There you go, like that. So I'm gonna let everything dry, but for all intents and purposes, the bulb side of the harness is done. We do need to get these connected to our LEDs on top, but I'm gonna wait for this to dry a couple hours.